How you doing, everybody? Jonathan here, and in this video I'm going to go over a topic that I got a couple of weeks ago, and that is some tips to consider when training an obese client. Tip number one is that you should remember that just because a client is obese, that doesn't mean that they are poorly conditioned. There are a lot of people out there who may not look the part, but could smoke you in a 5K and have the mobility or flexibility of a dancer, and they may just be struggling with that one area of nutrition. So that might be especially difficult for them because they can perform a certain way, but their looks don't suggest that. So you don't want to insult this person. And this advice stems from an experience that I had with a client who attended another boot camp and told me she left the next day because the trainer, upon seeing her, said, "Don't do this, this, and that because you probably can't do it." No point of reference, no questions, just assumed that she couldn't do it, and she said that completely turned her off, and that can be very frustrating for somebody who knows that they have the ability to perform and just wants to get that whole nutrition thing down. So don't assume that just because somebody's a little bit bigger that they are poorly conditioned. Now, as we want to talk about nutrition, that takes us to step number two, or thing number two to consider, and that is you want to understand that for an obese person, their struggle with nutrition is not usually about total volume, but usually about selection and frequency. All right, I think the media and just our own, poor thinking leads us to believe that all obese people just stuff their faces all day, when this is not the case, especially when they're making an effort to lose weight. My biggest clients, I find that I usually have to yell at them the most to eat more as they try to eat like less than 1,000 calories a day in an effort to speed up the weight loss process. The other extreme for obese clients, when they're not actively pursuing fat loss, is usually a case where they don't eat all day and then they have a very large meal that is devoid of any nutrients. So your goal as a trainer is to help to organize your client's thoughts in terms of nutrition, because 100 calories worth of broccoli versus 100 calories worth of French fries is completely different. And the obese client who has struggles with food selection needs to understand that. Also, backloading all of your calories to the end of the day when you're stressed versus, starting your day off with a meal so that you're not as hungry when you're least active at the end of the day is something that needs coaching. So it's not about total volume. You need to help your client organize their habits. Now, your third tip is to always understand that whatever limitations your obese client may have in terms of body weight exercises, they can more than make up with usually in external exercises. So you have to understand the obese client is carrying a little bit more weight. So push-ups are just going to naturally be harder for them. Squat jumps, box jumps, burpees, they're carrying more weight around, so you may find that they struggle a little bit more. This can be replaced with something, at least in the cardio end, with like boxing. You'll find that there's a little bit more force behind their punches and they can still get a great cardio workout. Or if you wanted to replace the performance of a push-up with the performance of a chest press, or the performance of a pull-up with the performance of a dumbbell row, you'll find that your obese client will outperform your smaller client or your regular size client. And as the obese client improves their nutrition and starts to get their weight down, the difference in terms of the ability to perform will be smaller. So don't put them in a position to constantly fail if they're struggling with body weight exercises. Give them things that they can work with to facilitate fat loss, and then you'll find that the body weight exercises will get a little bit easier. Tip number four, now for the obese client that is deconditioned, don't be afraid to start very slow. Now, all of this goes back to making sure that you ask a lot of questions in the beginning. And if this client hasn't exercised in a long time, if they haven't eaten healthily in a long time, you don't need to necessarily try to break them on their first day. Walking is a great option for these clients because the biggest thing that they have to improve upon is going to be their nutrition. So if you overwork them on their first day, you will make them too sore, and in a lot of cases you may scare them away, because that level of pain, you have to understand, it may be a little bit foreign to you because it's been so long that you put yourself through a workout that literally made you sore for a week straight. But to put a client through that who's very new and possibly very intimidated by the whole spectrum of getting fit, you don't want to do that. So don't be afraid to start very slow and let them know that if you're going to be tough on them with anything, it's going to be nutrition. Exercise will come with time, but you don't want to overwork them. Tip number 5 is to always make sure that they understand the rate of weight and or fat loss. That's because plateaus happen. And when a client starts to lose, a fair amount of weight in the beginning, they assume that it's going to continue at the same rate throughout time. And, they see shows like The Biggest Loser, and they assume, I lost 10 pounds in the first month, I should be able to lose 10 pounds every month, until I get down to my goal weight. That doesn't necessarily always work because of the difference in caloric deficit, or just because their body may not be ready to lose that weight that quickly. There are a number of things that affect fat loss, but you have to help them understand that while you may see a big chunk come off in the beginning or the first couple of weeks or maybe even months, your rate of weight and or fat loss may slow down a bit, but your goal is to stay consistent. Help them to understand it's a marathon, not a sprint, and just because you have a slight halt in fat or weight loss, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. You can reevaluate how they're eating. You can always have them have their blood work taken, make sure everything is working well internally, but help them understand that it's not always going to be perfect, even if they're putting in the same amount of effort. Tip number 7 is to always understand what food represents to your client. I look back to one of my previous clients, and for her, food was like her safety net. Whenever she had a bad day, she would eat food and that would make her feel better. Food represents a lot of things to different people. For some people, it gives them happiness. For some people, it just helps them deal with stress. But if somebody's going to see fat and or weight loss, food has to be viewed as fuel and not an emotional crutch. And what I found is with the morbidly obese clients, food tends to serve more as an emotional crutch than it does anything else. So once you can get to the heart of why they eat the way they do, you can then explore other options, other ways of relieving stress, other ways of dealing with stress they may not have learned as at a younger age. So first understand why they do what they do, and then you can help them to change their habits. So I hope you found this video helpful. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, comment below. If you have any questions or any ideas on new videos you want to see, send them my way and I'll put them up on YouTube, as long as you remember to eat healthy, hydrate, drive safe, stress levels low, get rest, don't slap anybody, love your clients, they will love you back. I will see you all tomorrow or the next day, and you have a good one.